L'Assemblée va.
The Assembly will now hear the statement of His Excellency Mr. Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, President of the Republic of Mali.
Pris les protocoles de bien.
I would request the protocol to escort His Excellency to the podium.
J'ai le grand plaisir de.
It is a great honor for me to welcome His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Mali. I would now invite him to address the Assembly.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President of the General Assembly, Heads of State and Government, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, my dear friend Antonio Guterres. At the outset, I wish to convey the greetings of the Malian people from Kai to Kidal, from Sikasso to Tourdenis, by passing by Kona in the Mopti region. Madam President, I would also like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to you on your brilliant election at the helm of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. Madam, this is a choice which honours you, and above and beyond that, it is indeed a choice that honours your beautiful country, Ecuador, with which Mali has excellent relations in terms of cooperation. Madam, I wish to state that our country, Mali, today, through the United Nations assistance and assistance provided by the international community, that we have reached a significant point following the presidential elections that have recently been successful. And as is customary, I would like to commend your predecessor, His Excellency Mr. Miroslav Lajčák from Slovakia, for the remarkable results he achieved during the 72nd session. Madam, I would also like to address my deep appreciation to the Secretary General of our common organization, Antonio Guterres, for his leadership and for the many initiatives he has undertaken aiming to further bolster the efficiency and credibility of the United Nations. Before continuing, it is with great honor that I pay a well-deserved tribute to the memory of the late Kofi Annan, the former United Nations Secretary General, who was taken away from us on the 18th of August last. I keep the memory of a great African diplomat who has worked throughout his entire life to promote peace and security at the international level as well as development across the world. Madam President, Mali is very pleased with your decision to place this session under the theme Making the United Nations Relevant to All People, Global Leadership and Shared Responsibilities for Peaceful, Equitable and Sustainable Societies. Certainly, this topic is of paramount importance for all member states of our organization, the goals and principles of which remain relevant, including in terms of prevention and overcoming the many crises that we, the peoples of the United Nations, face. For its part, Mali welcomes the tremendous and multifaceted contribution made by the United Nations organization to the stabilization process underway. Here, I would like to pay tribute to the women and men from MINUSMA for their commitment and their sacrifice in a security context which we know is indeed complex and difficult. Madam President, as leaders, we have the collective responsibility to do more and to do better in order to render our organization even more relevant and efficient for all. And in order to do this, the UN requires reforms. the guarantees of international, peaceful, inclusive, equitable and sustainable societies. In this connection, Mali very much welcomes the reforms undertaken by the Secretary-General in the spheres of development, peace and security. However, we must work on these initiatives, and we must also accept to reform some key bodies, including the Security Council and the General Assembly, including their composition and their working method. It is at the price of these vital reforms that together we will be in a position to live up to the deep aspirations of our peoples and to maintain and protect future generations from the scourge of war, as stipulated in the United Nations Charter. Madam President, the year 2018 is devoted to pursuing and bolstering the democratic and republican steps taken in Mali for its people towards peace, stability and development for the benefit of all of the peoples living in the Sahel region and indeed beyond. Indeed, in spite of all of the challenges that my country faces, the presidential elections took place within the constitutional timelines on the 29th of July and the 12th of August 2018, in conditions welcomed by all of the international community. The inclusive nature of organising these elections, which is attested to by the participation of all political stakeholders and civil society players, has enabled citizens to express freely their choice and to prove the political, democratic and republican maturity of the Malian people. For my part, following these elections, I take on the full trust that the Malian nation has renewed in me. That is why I have been committed to restoring trust among the state and citizens, to further improving the governance of the country. In addition, I shall work relentlessly to diligently and inclusively implement the peace agreement on reconciliation in Mali as a result of the Algiers process, which, let me recall, is the only alternative for my country to renew itself with peace and stability, a sine qua non condition of all development. To attain these objectives, within the context of my own country, a sacred union of all forces is required. Similarly, I restate my steadfast commitment to promoting dialogue and consultation in order to manage public affairs. Madam President, as you will have noted, I remain determined to push forward the peace process in Mali, to ensure that my country emerges from the greatest crisis in its history. Thus, under my authority, the government and Malian players, with the support of partners, have made significant strides forward in implementing the Agreement for Peace and Reconciliation in Mali. And in the name of the major steps taken, I am pleased to underscore the lack of confrontation and clashes between the Malian armed forces and armed movements since the signing of the agreement in May-June 2015. Thus, I wish to recall, and I am delighted to do so, that the Malian administration has returned to Kidal and to the other regions of the country. The presence of the state in these regions that have been heavily affected by the crisis has made it possible to open classrooms for children, and it has also made a contribution to gradually supplying basic social services that are necessary to the populations for the benefits of peace. Furthermore, I am pleased to note that in the Menaka and Twadini regions, that the interim authorities have been set up and are up and running in the 5 regions of the north, as well as the operational coordination mechanism in Kidal, Tombouctou and Gao. We are continuing the DDR process and the reform of the security sector. I know that these achievements are fragile, and I also know that we must do more and we must do better. That is why the roadmap of the 22nd of March 2018 was established. I instructed the government to uphold its commitments pursuant to these mechanisms. However, I must forcefully state that political will alone is not enough to achieve all of the commitments set out in the agreement. We also require appropriate technical and financial means. This is the time to reiterate my appeal to effectively and rapidly mobilize resources that have been pledged by our partners in order, in the agreed-upon timelines, to uphold the commitments set forth in the roadmap. I can assure you that the Malian people very much appreciate the solidarity provided by the international community through the presence and support of MINUSMA, the presence also of European forces, the Barkhane French force, the G5 Sahel, African Union, ECOWAS, and neighbouring countries. Madam President, in addition to the devastating effects of climate change on the living conditions of our peoples, the Sahel, for many years, still faces terrorism, transnational organised crime, and trafficking of all types, including trafficking in drugs, weapons, illegal goods, migrants, and money laundering. Madam, a Antichrist war, a war waged in the name of obscurity, where death is no accident. This is a reality of the battle. It's an extreme sacrifice, the ultimate goal. This is what is happening in the Sahel, and you will therefore understand how important it is to combat terrorism that we are compelled to do. To combat these threats, Madam, we have set up in November 2014 in Nouakchott the G5 Sahel, which includes Mauritania, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali and Chad, in order to pool our efforts in our area of peace and security to face these threats, because we have indeed understood the link that exists between the fragility of our states, the precariousness of our populations, and the parties involved. However, the joint G5 Sahel force is struggling to be fully operational. This is because it lacks an appropriate mandate and, above all, appropriate funding. We believe that combating terrorism in Sahel is a significant contribution to international security. It is for that reason that we shall continue to request the Security Council to authorize the deployment of this force under Chapter 7 of the Charter for adequate, sustainable and predictable financing through the United Nations in order to sustainably and effectively discharge its mandate. In the same vein, we call upon our bilateral and multilateral partners who have pledged financial contributions in February 2018 during the Brussels conference to honour their commitments to the G5 Sahel joint force. In addition to the security response, the G5 Sahel is settling down to the task of implementing its priority investment programme in order to face the development challenges which are amongst the deep-rooted causes of instability in our common space. Madam President, at the national level, I have made the fight against poverty one of the priorities of my second five-year plan. During the swearing-in ceremony on the 4th of September last, I committed myself before the Malian people to do my utmost to optimize our system of national solidarity in order to ensure that no one is left behind in Mali. I wish to launch a new social model based on equality, social justice, and creating successful conditions for all. Promoting Malian youth will be at the very core of my action for the next 5 years. Young people are the great cause of my second term. I will be committed to setting up a national pact for youth through significant investment to reform our educational and training system as well as job creation. Equally, I wish to pursue and step up the achievement of vast road, agriculture, water, energy and social housing infrastructure. I remain convinced that implementing these priority actions will expedite the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, nationwide. In this respect, Mali welcomes the fact that here in New York in July 2018, it submitted its national voluntary report to implement the SDGs. Madam President, Mali is a country of origin, transit, and a host country for migrants, and therefore it welcomes the conclusion of negotiations on the Global Compact on Migration for safe, orderly, and regular migration, and human migration also. This collective decision provides hope to the 250 million migrants across the world and beyond, to all of mankind, at a time when the migration issue has become a major key issue for all states. Of course, Mali will take an active part in the International Marrakesh Conference to be held in December 2018. The aim is to formally adopt the Global Compact on safe, orderly, and regular migration, which provides us with a framework to globally manage and framework for governance of migration at the global level. Mali will continue to take on its and shoulder its responsibility in managing migration flows in line with the national migration policy. Madam President, in spite of the domestic situation, the people and government of Mali are following the situation in Africa and throughout the world. In Africa, we very much welcome the normalization of diplomatic relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea. We also welcome the conclusion of a peace agreement between our brothers in South Sudan. Also, we wish to express our profound appreciation for the holding of the legislative elections in Mauritania. We wish to commend the people of this brotherly and friendly country for its political maturity and democratic commitment. Nonetheless, we are profoundly concerned at the situation in Libya, which unfortunately continues to have a negative impact on the security and stability in the Sahel region. In the light of this situation, which has gone on for too long, we would launch an appeal to the international community in order to bring the Libyan parties to foster dialogue and to seek sustainable solutions to the crisis. Similarly, Mali is following with great concern the situation in the Middle East, in particular in the occupied Palestinian territories. The Malian people reaffirms its support to the brotherly Palestinian people in its legitimate struggle to achieve self-determination. The Malian government calls upon the Israeli Palestinians to resume negotiations with a view to setting up a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and within internationally recognized safe borders. On the humanitarian level, Mali is very concerned about the precarious situation of 65 million refugees and IDPs in the world as a result of armed conflicts, natural disasters, and climate change. And here I wish to spare a thought for my compatriots who are refugees in neighbouring countries. I wish to thank them for their hospitality and their generosity. My compatriots, I'd like to ensure that the government will spare no effort to continue to provide assistance and to create conditions enabling them to return to the country in dignity and in security. Madam President, Mali has always believed in international security and is delighted with its cooperation with the United Nations Organization. Today, Mali benefits from multifaceted support. Today, I have the privilege as the leader of Mali to reaffirm its commitment to building a peaceful, equitable and prosperous world for all. I wish to conclude by renewing the profound gratitude of the people and government of Mali to the United Nations and also to bilateral and multilateral partners for the ongoing constant support provided to overcome the crisis in my country. For my part, I reaffirm our full commitment to spare no efforts to ensure that the agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali will be implemented diligently and comprehensively as a result of the Algiers process. I thank you.
On
behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Mali for his statement. I would like to ask representatives to remain seated while we bid farewell to the head of state.